Grand Rising, Grand Rising. I'm going to do a sound check real quick. How's everybody doing today? Okay, yesterday I gave my VIP a cheat sheet. Georgia 362-632-930-620-857-138. 6239-5041-8710. North Carolina 224-365-724. 887-761-940. Florida, you got 871-915-201-901-362-564. 362 Georgia, North Carolina. I hope you are seeing this. And Florida, Ohio 224. You can see 224 North Carolina. You got 7365-0139-492-924-390. Michigan 324-423-8900-2054-4520-7361. Tennessee 317-2486-2487 380-308-730. Texas, you'll be hearing from me with Texas shortly. Fire combinations 551-044-736-4-2, 530-887-737-2244-990-611. You got 2167, and you also have 3287 and 889. Triple dollar sign combinations are 683, 623. Boom, boom, boom. You got 5487, 8432, 366, 714. You also have, let's see here, 704, 6351, 688, 153, 963, 12485, and 812. Your black sheep, 754-849, Georgia, 761-940-420-897, North Carolina, Florida, 201 and 529, Ohio, 0139, 7365, 890-096-247, Michigan. You got 2486, you got 2487, 1487-371-792, Tennessee, 857-138-709-8710-6311-5311-5365. Ladies and gentlemen, 360 dropped on January 5th in Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, 360, I guaranteed, would manifest straight between the dates 1-2 and 110. There you go with me showing off. You see it for yourself. Number one motherfucking big money pattern right there. You got 8549, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire for Tennessee. You see it for yourself. I told my VIP you would see this number manifest between the dates 1-2 and 110. Here I go showing off. Promise my top two would manifest between the dates 12/31 and 1/8 in Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, 5138. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Number one motherfucking big money pattern. 20 hours before it even debuted, my VIP already knew. There I go showing off. I told you, the very last number you see, I can and will make it manifest first. Between the dates 1, 2, and 110. Ladies and gentlemen, 958, ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP that I would make 958 manifest straight by the deadline date. You see it for yourself in writing. Promise kept. Ladies and gentlemen, 800, ladies and gentlemen, 800. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my only big money pattern on fire would manifest straight. You see it for yourself between the dates 1-1 and 1-9. Ladies and gentlemen, 1748, ladies and gentlemen, only 6 hours. And this was a cheat sheet, black sheep, underdog. I told my VIP that nobody would be investing in that big money pattern. I also guaranteed my VIP the number 4 big money pattern would manifest between the dates 1-4 and 113. You see it for yourself. Here I go showing off with the number 1 motherfucking big money pattern. You cannot lose. Ladies and gentlemen, 651. Ladies and gentlemen, 651. Black sheep, black sheep. On 1-5, I told my VIP nobody would be playing that number. Here I go again. I promised my VIP at the same time that you could manifest this yourself. Between the dates 12/29 and 1/6, it dropped on 1/5. Ladies and gentlemen, 260, ladies and gentlemen, black sheep, black sheep. No one would be thinking about that one but me. 260, straight. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go showing off 8 hours before it even dropped. I promised my VIP that they would see that big money pattern same day. Ladies and gentlemen, 4831. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 motherfucking big money pattern. I told my VIP, look, between the dates 1-3 and 1-11, you would see that manifest. Here I go again, promising it 2 times, triple dollar signing it that time between the dates 12/30 and 1/7. Here I go again, ladies and gentlemen, right there, triple dollar signing it again for it to manifest 1/3 to 1/11. Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen, 8541, right there, 4158, guaranteed by the deadline date. Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen, deadline, 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 deadline. All you got to do is go to the very last date. Today's date is 1/6. Today is the very last day for you to go back to the very last day and win. As you can see, all the way back to the very last day, you can continue to keep reaping the benefits of a residual income, no matter what. Ladies and gentlemen, 080. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. I told my VIP, same day you would see that big money pattern manifest. Ladies and gentlemen, look, 553. Ladies and gentlemen, you see it for yourself. Black sheep, deadline met. There you're 2, 2, 2, 3. ladies and gentlemen, 15 hours before it dropped, I knew no one would be investing in that black sheep underdog. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go again showing off. I knew at 1:29 a.m. on 12/29 that that number would not be wagered on. Ladies and gentlemen, 9764. Ladies and gentlemen, 9764. I promised my VIP if they believed in my hard-ass work, they would reap the benefits of that triple dollar sign. I told them this number I will make manifest. 12 to 110. Ladies and gentlemen, 789. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP that my number one motherfucking big money pattern would manifest straight between the dates 12/31 and 1/8. Ladies and gentlemen, 5-7 deuce. Ladies and gentlemen, I guaranteed my number four big money pattern would manifest between the dates 1-2 and 110 straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 976. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP 976 I would make manifest straight on 1-2. I told them to begin investing in that big money pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, 2031. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP if they believed in me to win, to focus on my top 5 4 digits, which I promise the first two big money patterns will manifest between the dates 1-3 and 1-12. I also guarantee they would see it drop in Texas. There you have it, right there. Boom, boom, boom. Ladies and gentlemen, 5205. Ladies and gentlemen, number one motherfucking big money pattern. I told my VIP they would see me manifest that big money pattern by the deadline date. You see it for yourself right there. Boom, boom, boom. 1764. I promised my VIP that I could make that number manifest between the dates 1-1 and 1-9. Ladies and gentlemen, you see 711. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise the very last motherfucking number you see, I would manifest it first, straight, in less than 8 motherfucking hours. Ladies and gentlemen, 772. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised by the deadline date, I could manifest 772 straight. Only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, 618. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP number one motherfucking big money pattern straight between the dates 1-3 and 1-11. Ladies and gentlemen, 994. Ladies and gentlemen, 994. Black sheep on time. Nobody knew but me. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, promised. You see it for yourself. Triple dollar signed it as proof that I knew you would manifest that number by yourself, just believing in my hard-ass work. Ladies and gentlemen, you got 6981. Ladies and gentlemen, 6981. Guaranteed to manifest straight. You see it for yourself. To win, focus on my top 5 4 digits. They will manifest 1-2 to 111 in North Carolina. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 8, 1. Straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 895. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my VIP, my number one motherfucking big money pattern. Straight between the dates. Oh, look at that. On 1-5. I told them there would be no waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, 120. Ladies and gentlemen, 120. You see it for yourself right there. Straight! Triple dollar signed. Ladies and gentlemen, 856. Ladies and gentlemen, 856. Straight! Triple dollar signed as proof that I promised that number would fruition between the dates 1-2 and 110. Well, I see ain't nobody really enjoying my work, so I'm going to cut this short. We got 0782, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. Right there. I told my VIP between the dates 1-3 and 111, they would see this number manifest. Ladies and gentlemen, you got your 5874. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my top 2 motherfucking big money patterns would manifest. You see it for yourself right there between the dates 1-3 and 111. I told them they would see it on 1-5. Here I go showing off. Boom, boom, boom. Triple dollar signed it, made it top 5. You can't go wrong if you follow the prerequisite. Look at me go. Boom, boom, boom. Even had the energy, frequency, and vibration of the black sheep. They told me, look, nobody's going to be looking at this but me. Ladies and gentlemen, you got your 699. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see, you can count on the black sheep to manifest. Right there, 996. Ladies and gentlemen, there's me with your 895 and your 8549. Oh, look at this. Handpicked 5, 6, 12, and 24. Put a double play on it, multiple draws. They pull 5, 6, 24, 12, 35. You see it 5, 6, 12, 5, 6, 12. There's your 24. Boom, boom, boom. Y'all see me working. Ladies and gentlemen, 441. Ladies and gentlemen, 441 straight. You see it for yourself. Very last motherfucking number you see. 23 hours is all it took. Ladies and gentlemen, 121. Ladies and gentlemen, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire.